Hey everyone, I'm excited to introduce to you Lionel Church, who is my dear friend. We'll get into how we met and all that, but yeah, you have such a fascinating background. I'll just read a little bit more about your experience, or kind of share with everyone a little bit about your background. You were a chief operating officer with the Food Revolution Network, and you've done everything from project management, operations management. You have your own consulting business as well to help with environmental, social governance frameworks to help improve business performance. And yeah, man, like you just lead with your heart, and we'll dig deeper into all the cool stuff that you're up to. But I'm excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Davidson. Yeah, we've had such like a great time in our friendship, and it's always like fruitful, interesting conversations.
uh
And yeah, I'm like honored that you invited me into this. So thank you.
yeah. I was just thinking, so for the context, for those of you who are listening who aren't familiar with Lionel, um, and the context of why I thought about you is because I'm in this second year of this landmarks team management leadership program. And then every quarter we have something called Game in the Worlds where we essentially create from nothing. And it's like, oh, what do I want to focus on this quarter? And, part of my journey where I'm at now is sort of this like financial independence type of world where I wouldn't say fire movement because I think that that's a little bit too far where it's a little bit too much focused on penny pinching, but I would say I'm in this world where I think our society doesn't really teach us how to focus on personal finance, and it's like not really even taught in school. So I was like, oh, Lionel's like one of those guys I feel like that would be able to add a lot of value to the listeners. And I think you have a beautiful soul, and I think that's what I want to share with everyone as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Davidson. Yeah, no, I mean that's a big interest of mine, and
Yeah.
I feel like I've been pursuing that my whole career.
Yeah.
Is trying to be conscious in my relationship with money and my personal finances. So
Yeah.
it's definitely something that I've been focused on for a long time, and
Yeah.
yeah, happy to bring it to everyone here.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're in the middle of creating like what that looks like to try to get as many listeners and viewers as possible. So we'll coordinate on a date that works for both of us. So we'll dig deeper into that. But I do think that you have a lot of unique like experiences, and you've delved pretty deeply into personal development. I know when you share with me your father, and then he's one of the like godfathers of this work, right? So wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that if you're okay with sharing with us like what it was like growing up with a father who was sort of this like figure who's like responsible for like a lot of these deep doing a lot of the inner work you know
Yeah, I mean, my experience of it. So my dad, Dawson Church, he's an author and workshop leader, and he leads retreats around the United States and internationally. And he does work around meditation and trauma therapy. Um, and when I was growing up, my biggest experience was that I just experienced the intentionality
hmm.
that he was putting into raising me.
Hmm.
So I had a lot of experience of him being careful and thoughtful about the words that he chose to use.
Hmm.
Um, One of his like greatest achievements as a parent is he was conscious of how he would respond to me when I was doing things that that I shouldn't be doing.
Uh-huh.
And apparently my first word, most kids, their first word is no, but my first word was yes.
Huh.
And this is like a mark of like parenting pride that he has.
Oh, wow.
um, because he was trying to find a way to take whatever I was doing and redirect the energy. So rather
Right.
than stop the energy, he wanted to redirect it.
Huh.
And yeah, and so I felt that I had a lot of I had guidance, I had support, which are these really key things. Also because he was an author and a publisher, he was having interesting authors and thinkers and speakers over for dinner regularly.
Wow.
Uh, and so I got to hang out with a cool cast of characters as I was
Huh.
growing up.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's rare you meet people like yourself who I think you're not someone I would say who's like have like the herd mentality, right? Like you're very much I hate to use the word woke because I feel like even that sometimes has its own connotations, but I think you're just very conscious and just mindful and you're intentional with your actions, your projects, and not only who you choose to spend your time with, right? But just a lot of the projects and what you're up to in life.
Mm, thanks. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I've found that for whatever reason, I like to be very clear about what I'm setting out to achieve or accomplish or do. Um, which I mean, I feel like that feels like sort of I don't know, reaching sort of terms, but it's more just that I want to have intention in the things that I'm doing. I want to be living my life in all the different aspects of it on purpose.
Hmm.
I don't want to be just getting by.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
want to be working towards things that I think matter. And
Mm.
so first it's like getting quiet inside and asking myself what matters to me.
Hmm.
And then as I'm working in the world, I want the things that I'm working on and towards to be the things that I actually want and that I
Mm.
actually care about and that I think matter to myself and to my community and to society and to the I mean actually extended out as the earth itself. You know,
Mm.
I want to be living in a way and doing work in a way that is beneficial um, to the whole system.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and it's clear, right? You're very like environmentally conscious. I remember one of the things that stood out to me is like the first one of the first times we hung out, I think you brought your own like I think we went to like a Chipotle or something like that. And then yeah, you brought your kit, your spoon and knife and all that. And I was like, "Oh, like not many of my friends do that, you know?"
Hey,
Oh, the
there it
same one.
is.
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Probably a different kit since the time we met. This is a cool
Oh.
kit that I bought in New York City from these cool women entrepreneurs. Um, and but yeah, I always carry this like in my backpack or my bag or whatever I'm bringing with me. And
Mhm.
when I was living in New York City for those 5 years, I must have saved like probably 2,000 sets of plastic utensils
Wow.
over the course of those 5 years.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, imagine times like what New York as any given time has 5 million people, probably, right? Time like
Hmm.
2,000 times 5 million, like that's a lot of plastic. That's wild. Yeah. And I thought what's interesting as well is oh, you have a journaling practice as well. Would you be open to sharing more about your journaling practice?
The journal.
Yeah.
I had none of this staged. It's just that like these are things that I always just keep nearby me.
Right, right.
So actually I've got two different sort of like books I use. I've got the personal journal and then also the business notebook. And they're like kind of they're my duo.
Uh-huh.
And I always have them, yeah, I don't always have them with me, but I always have them um when I'm going to be working or wherever I'm staying. If I'm even when I'm traveling like around the country or around the world, like I don't go anywhere without them.
Mm. Yeah.
Um and for me, journaling is not recording everything that happened.
Right.
For me, journaling is a place of like deep inner reflection. So it's where I get clear about sometimes about my emotions.
Mhm.
But it's especially a place where I get clear about my thinking. So
Ah.
when I have fuzzy thinking or unclear thinking, um, or I don't know, sort of like sort of an uncertainty, I'll write. and I'm comfortable being nonsensical. Um, and I'm comfortable, I don't know, like actually just doing anything, right? Like my journal is a place of total freedom.
Mm. Hmm.
My business notebook, on the other hand, um, is for like anything that's related to real structure, right? So it's where I'll write down goals. It's where I write down, I've actually like what's been really important to me in the last few years is slowing down and really getting clear about what my priorities are right now.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's funny. I mean, I've done like different types of planning where I think about goals over periods of time, 3 months, a year, multiple years. But I really like using my business notebook for just like get identifying beyond my bigger goals, what are my priorities right now in this period of time? Um, and I find that, they kind of change naturally on their own. And sometimes it's a matter of weeks, sometimes it's a matter of months. But once like a phase has changed, I oftentimes find myself with new priorities. And
Mm.
what happens is I'll feel that I'm kind of uneasy. Like I don't know how to spend my time
Hmm.
as an entrepreneur where I have a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of different
Mm.
things that I can be doing.
Yeah.
Um, and I've realized that when I'm not sure what to spend my time doing, it's because I'm not clear about my priorities.
Mm.
And that I've learned, it's been really nice to have learned that's the trigger. And so I've got a kind of actually a habit that's developed where when I'm unclear about my priorities, then I pick up
Mm.
my business notebook, I slow down, I
Mm.
figure out what they are, and I write them down.
Hmm.
And then I'm able to use that as my framework for like that next period of time.
So what are some of your priorities nowadays? If you're willing to share with us?
Um, I'm going into a time right now where yeah, where my priorities are not super business for the next few
Mm.
weeks.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna leave. I'm about to go on a trip to Germany for 3 weeks,
Oh, very cool.
and I've been learning to speak German for the last 2 years.
Oh,
And this will be my first trip to Germany since I started learning to speak German. Uh,
what? Wow.
yeah, so I think my priority through the end of the year, um, is going to be, I don't have this written down, because it's not super structured. It's not something I have to keep on referencing back to.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it's I'm generating leads for my business, with some marketing work that I'm doing, that I'll probably sell into the new year. And then I'm yeah, gonna just like experience being in Germany. Um,
I mean, which area are you going to multiple areas in Germany?
I'm going to fly into Berlin, and then I'm going to be staying in Leipzig with one of my good friends.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that
So
is that close to Berlin or how far is that away?
I think it's a 90-minute or uh car ride or something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
And it's a little southwest of Berlin.
Okay. But sounds like you'll probably be spending some time in Berlin as well, right?
I'm gonna fly in and fly out of Berlin, and maybe I'll do a weekend trip there. We'll see.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say if you want, I can introduce you to some of my friends in Berlin because I Coach Hub was based in Berlin. So
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So know a
Oh,
lot
very
of
cool.
ex-coworkers that live there, and I can make if you think that's useful.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that, Davidson.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah, your life is always interesting, right? I can always count on you for if I'm, if I want to call you, like I can always count on an interesting conversation, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and you know what? Actually, there's I've only you're actually you're a standout friend in the way that you will call me. I know a lot of people, and I
Hmm.
actually have like maintain quite a number of really strong friendships.
Hmm.
But you have a you're like actually an outlier among people that I know in your like you won't like text ahead always and like schedule something. You'll do that too. Like that's how we did this.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you have a comfort with just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna call Lionel.
yeah, yeah,
And I love that. I think that like for anyone listening, like what Davidson does there, in my experience of my friendships, um, like that is one of the most like powerful and valuable ways to build and maintain friendships and develop
yeah.
stronger friendships. And sometimes
Oh,
these conversations that we have, Davidson, like sometimes we've only got like 10 minutes and
uh-huh.
we're like, oh yeah, I was just in the middle of something. I gotta go. Or like not in the middle, but like I got something to go to.
Right, right.
And so it's not about like a big long catch up and or like
Mm,
a huge check in. It's just like it's
yeah.
just a touch point.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and I've come to really really appreciate friendships in my life where I just have like these touch points with
Oh,
people. It doesn't have to be like a huge thing every time we talk.
huh.
So
Yes, and I would say you're really good at those deeper, like sitting down over a beer or two and just having three, like you're good at those 3 hour conversations too, you know?
oh yeah, those are my favorite. That's my
Yeah.
lifeblood right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I do think, thank you for the acknowledgement. It's funny because it's something that I do, and sometimes like I'm like almost like bitter. I'm not with you. I would say like certain people where I'm like, oh, I feel like I always have to be the one that is
Yeah.
more putting more of the effort in, right? But I do think it is nice to hear that because like sometimes I'm just like, oh, like do they even care? You know?
Yeah.
But with you, like, it's obvious that you care, like, because you actually verbally communicate, like, "Oh, like, I appreciate it," you know? Whereas
Yeah.
with other people, sometimes it feels like it's being, like, taken for granted in a way,
Okay.
you know?
Got it. Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting because it's actually one of the things that I'm, like, trying to do less of, but
Okay.
actually in
Yeah.
service of me. And I think with key people like yourself, like, yes, I'm still gonna be intentional always, but I think with certain people where it feels like I'm almost like, oh, I'm trying too hard, then I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, like if this is not organic, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
So
totally. Well, I mean, one is that like just the like reaching out to people is a friendship skill.
mhm. Hmm.
Um, but then also, I mean, what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that you're getting a little bit deeper and wanting to be intentional about the way that you exercise it too.
Hmm.
And you're paying attention, it sounds like too, to yeah, like what you're feeling and what's happening in the relationship between you and the other person. Um,
Yeah. It, and I think, and you would get this too. I think because we are curious people that are continuously digging deeper into different thresholds, I do think we do have when we do catch up, there's just a lot more quote unquote, and this might seem kind of judgmental, but just substance behind our conversations, right? Whereas
sure.
like with some people, like it's sort of very like surface level, you know? So
Mm,
it's sort of like I feel like with us, we can talk about like deeper topics because
hmm
our passions and our interests vary across so many spectrums, you know?
hmm
So it does feel like a lot more there's a lot more areas we can go in our conversations.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I mean, when you got like, a lot of like life and energy and doing things, uh, it's fun to share that. And
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, and we have a good vibe that oftentimes happens for us, right? Where we're both like really doing things. And so there's a lot to share that's,
Right.
wonderful on both sides.
That's a fair, that's good point, right? Because we both in a given, let's say it's been like 6 or 9 months since we've last like really caught up. When we do catch up, there's so much to update on. Like even Germany, right? I'm sure once you kind of go come back, I would love to hear about like, hey, like I would love to ask you, what can Americans learn from Germans that they do well that you would like to bring into the practice and the culture here, you know?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. I'm going to be thinking about that question now.
Yeah.
as I'm there. That's awesome. I'm
Well,
actually
I
gonna
do.
like you just casually asked that question out the top of your head right now, but I feel like
Uh,
that question is gonna actually like be really baking for me. And I'm actually gonna be like looking at my experiences in Germany through that
I love
lens now,
that.
Davidson.
Well, and I do hear that Berlin is also it's so different than the rest of Germany as well, that it is very like open-minded and it's very diverse and it's just like it is a lot different. So I'm sure even within that, right, is it's like its own bubble from what I
Yeah,
hear from everyone. Yeah.
yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I think Berlin, it's there, it's Germany's New York City.
Right. Right.
Um, and it's not, yeah, I think it's not, I don't think it's, yeah, anyways, I don't have to characterize it per se. New York City, all I'll say is incredible. And I love New York City.
Yeah.
Um, but Berlin has that feeling of being the really like internationally connected um hub of Germany.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was surprised to see like diversity. I'm Vietnamese, or my parents were born in Vietnam, and when I went there, I was surprised to see so many Vietnamese restaurants there. Like it was like a lot of surprising things about Berlin. I found out is because they really welcome refugees, and there was a time where they really needed like labor, so they just opened up their borders to everyone. So it ends up being a very diverse city because of that. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll look for the Vietnamese restaurant when I'm in Berlin.
It's everywhere. Like it's hard to miss. But yeah, I think because I'm from the lens of a Vietnamese person, I'm like, wow, there's like Vietnamese people everywhere here. Cool, man. Well, I'm curious. It sounds like you've worked for like, how do you go about choosing like your time and your partnerships, right? It sounds like you partner on a lot of different initiatives and you consult for a lot of different businesses. And I'm sure as you get older, you're even more picky with like where you choose to spend your time, right?
Hmm. Yeah, it's true. I am. Yeah, that's a really nice question. I mean, I personally I'm very relationship driven.
Yeah.
And I, yeah, so I've really built my career around like doing work with entrepreneurs that I love and support, and
Mhm.
whose vision and mission and the work they're doing, um, I find it important in the world,
Mhm.
in some sort of like a deeper, holistic way.
Hmm.
So with finished, I went to the University of California, Santa Cruz,
Mhm.
and I got an economics degree. And but I also took a social change class,
Mhm.
and I got clear during that time of my life that I really wanted to do the work of helping to build socially responsible and environmentally sustainable businesses.
Uh-huh.
And I had
Mm.
this like vivid vision, while I was in that social change class, of
Wow.
doing this work, um, like over and over again, um, helping build companies that are really like the companies of the future, the companies that we need,
Mhm.
that are going to, like, through their actions, be taking climate action and addressing some of the, yeah, addressing social problems, both with employees and in their
Mhm.
communities. And in that class, independent of having this dream and vision, one of the presenters in that class was Ocean Robbins. And I heard his message, doing social change. He was leading a social change nonprofit at the time,
Mhm.
and his environmental message. Um, and he was like, PS, or like, not PS. In the thing, he kind of casually mentioned that his father was John Robbins.
Mhm.
And I was reading his dad's book at that time, one of
Oh.
his dad's books, the book called The Food Revolution.
Hmm.
And I, um, yeah, so I ended up doing volunteer work with Ocean's nonprofit. Yes, it's called. And then Ocean stepped back from the nonprofit, like about a year later after I'd been doing that volunteer work, and passed it on to someone else, and came and spoke to me about wanting to build a social enterprise business, um, where he was going to build a business around this work his dad had done. That work is how food connects with sustainability, personal health, and ethics in all sorts of ways, like the
Hmm.
way that farm workers are treated, for instance.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, that was just like an infectious vision. Infectious is a pretty terrible term. We all in our
And
culture need to find
nowadays, yeah.
another way to describe that, right? um, but um, but I felt that the things I was most passionate about at that time were reducing CO2 emissions, and being a Californian, um, improving fresh water use, right?
Hmm.
Because fresh waters is such an issue that we're going to be facing for the rest of our lives, and not only in California but around the world. But we've really felt it acutely in California.
Hmm.
Um, and that motivated me for the next 7 years working with Food Revolution Network, Ocean Robbins building Food Revolution Network.
Hmm.
Is that I knew that the work that we were doing, this educational work, um, was helping, hundreds of thousands of people gain deeper education and learn about ways that they could actually improve their health, improve environmental sustainability, and
Hmm.
actually create a more ethical, world for everyone.
Hmm.
So I felt proud of that work.
Hmm.
And I think that's really what guides me, in picking who I've worked with as clients.
Hmm.
And you know what? Clients feels like a really hollow word to me, actually.
Hmm.
Because the feeling that I have about it is, I've got this one life. And when I'm choosing to spend my time during this life that I have to help someone build something, that is not nothing.
Hmm. Hmm.
That, like, it's one of the most sacred things that I feel that I can do. And you listen, I mean, for anyone that's listening to this, like, our time is incredibly valuable. And what we choose to do with it, I think is sacred. Or it can be, or at least it can be seen that way, or we can
Hmm.
experience it that way.
Right.
And so I want to be I want to be contributing my time to collaborate with people, where a shared vision, and we're working towards things that really matter.
That's awesome. I think it's a good reminder because many people think that it's impossible to have it all, right? Like have something you actually enjoy doing that's purposeful, that gives back to the community while actually making money, right?
Hmm.
While actually having there's a market need and the society will actually
Hmm.
pay you what you're worth. And then um yeah, something that you're actually good at, right? I think if you have
Yeah.
all three, then the ikigai,
Yeah.
then that's ideal.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, everything I just said is true. And at the same time, people might be surprised to hear that, uh, I love business and businesses,
Hmm.
because businesses, the way that I see it, do the work that needs to be done.
Hmm.
Um, Businesses organize people, and capital, and land, and and government, um, resources. I mean, businesses are the coordination tool that we use to
Hmm.
get work done.
Hmm.
important work that we need done. So I businesses have caused a lot of environmental destruction,
Yeah.
harm. Um, but businesses are also it's very flexible. I mean, they've done so in part inside the context that society and governments have given them.
Hmm. Hmm.
And but businesses have also made humanity comfortable, prosperous, well
Hmm.
fed. Um, and so, there's tremendous positives that are coming from, yeah, from great business and private enterprise.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm supportive of that. And I just want to work towards a world in which um, the economy, the whole economy, um, is operating inside the limits of the earth
Hmm.
and is supporting people. And I think we absolutely can do that. Um, a great book I want to reference here um, is The Donut Economy by Kate Rayworth. And the concept is very much what I just spoke to. We want to be living, I think, building the economy in such a way that it's good for the earth and it's good for people.
Hmm. Wow, it kind of reminded what you're speaking about reminds me of I'll never forget this. I went to like a Tony Robbins conference, Date with Destiny, where he classified there's like different types of people in the world, right? And this like the way he did it, I was like, "Oh, I'll never forget this." He called it like the green folks are like very much about like saving the environment. They're like very socially conscious people, like people that typically work for nonprofits, people that are doing good in the world, right? And he classified the orange people are as like the business builders, right? Like the entrepreneurs, the one that are like, kind of like like leaning towards capitalism, right? So he classified all these different people, and he had in the way he had it was like the people that were arguing with each other. It was very exaggerated, right? So it was like you can clearly see how righteous everyone was being and how right everyone wanted to be. But at the end of like that 5 hour experiment, you kind of left. You're like, oh, each of us play a part in this world, right? You can't have one. You can't just have the whole world. Just can't be just one. It has to be all these together kind of build the world that we live in, so it was just interesting to hear that the way he described it, and I was like, oh, okay, I could see how, because I would say I was like one of those, like at the time when I was taking the course, I felt like I was one of those green people, but in my righteousness, in my like morals and stuff like that, I was pushing away like 95% of the world because I thought I was better than, because I thought I was enlightened, you know,
Mm.
and I discounted that, like you said, like, a lot of the orange people, like, that's why I do have a house. That's why, you know what I mean? Like, that's why I don't have to worry about, like I'll be fine, right? There's medicines that I can get, a vaccine, so I don't die. Like, there's some good, obviously, when it comes to like the manufacturing and the production, right? So, no, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I love it. I love that you're one of the few people I know that is, thoughtful in understanding, trying to understand someone else's perspective instead of being so quick to judge and quick to give the answer.
Thanks. Yeah, I do my best when I can.
Yeah, well, and so I'm curious, like you've built this life that's like, more entrepreneurial where you're consulting, you have a lot of collaborators and business partners. Like, how does one create a life where like you can't just up and leave and move to Germany for, I don't know, how long you gonna be in Germany for?
3 weeks.
3 weeks, right? Like it's I would say not the average person doesn't just like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, move from Vermont to California and then I'm gonna go live in Germany for 3 weeks, right? Like, how does one create that life?
How does one create any life, Davidson?
Take
creating a
an
life
action.
is it's a crazy journey. um, I've been committed to doing work that is fully remote
Yeah.
for a long time. So yeah, the pandemic was a really surreal experience because everyone started doing what I had already been doing for a decade.
Uh,
I helped one organization actually make the transition too.
oh.
Um, yeah, they had to shift their conferences from being online, from being in person to online.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean there are a lot of principles that are working me in my life. Um, and one of them is that freedom to have the freedom of, yeah, having flexibility around both my when I work and like where I am.
Hmm.
Um, so I've chosen my work and built my career around being able to do that. Also,
Hmm.
when I wanted to buy my first home, and I wanted to do it in such a way that I could still travel and I could still live wherever I want. Um, and and it wasn't a financial drain on me at all. So with all of those sort of criteria, that led me to um, the perspective of more real estate investing,
Hmm.
uh, rather than just a single family home purchase for me.
Right. Right.
So when I made my first purchase, I mean, first I spent some years. I spent some time, first a month and some years really learning how that field works. Biggerpockets.com for anyone that
Oh.
like is interested in that. It's the best
Hmm.
community out there.
Oh yeah.
It's so vibrant. It's yeah, it's kind of like it's yeah, there I don't even think there are really any competitors out there.
Hmm.
Um, that is the community of real estate investors in the United States.
Oh.
Um,
They have that podcast, right?
yep, their podcasts are incredible.
Yeah, I started listening to them ironically like a
Mhm.
month ago.
Nice, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're very cool. And yeah, so I ended up purchasing a multi-family building as a personal residence and living there. And and that just makes sense and works for me. Because I have a home, I can go back there anytime. It's furnished, it's beautiful. I have a basement, I can keep stuff, no storage units in my life.
Yeah.
Um, but the whole thing is rented out and I have some passive income from it.
And it seems like you're a minimalist, right? Would you say like you don't have like a lot of stuff that you keep, right? It seems like.
Yeah, um I've done what's practical to me, and I probably thought of minimalism and thought of myself as a minimalist maybe at some point. That
Hmm.
whole concept has sort of like left for me.
Yeah.
But other people describe me as a minimalist.
Compared to
So
me, you're very much a minimalist, I
yeah,
would
so
say.
I think I am a minimalist, but
Yeah.
not as like a philosophy,
Right.
just in the way that I live. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I guess yeah. I would say like compared to my friends, like you're definitely a minimalist.
Yeah, cool. That's great. I mean,
Yeah.
I want to have freedom.
Hmm.
And so like I can't be bound down by too much
Stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, unless again, like with my building, my apartment is rented out on a medium term basis right now to traveling nurses.
Right. Right.
And so I love owning all of those things and have it be part of my life and a place that I can spend time at.
Hmm.
And but it's also like I'm also, it's also part of the one of my businesses,
Hmm.
and somebody else lives in that space, and those are those are their things to use for the time that they're there. So
Yeah.
I love that, like, those things belong to that house.
Right.
They're mine. I own them. I'm responsible for them. Yeah, it's my stuff. But it belongs to that house. And
Right.
I'm
Right.
still free to go be where I want and do what I want.
I love that. I'm hearing freedom as a theme across all this, right? Career wise, time management wise, like just a real intentionality in creating like the life you actually want in a mindful way.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
That's awesome. Um, well, yeah, and I'm curious about so you were in Brooklyn, like what were some of like your takeaways living in Brooklyn, right? Because that's a lot different than Vermont, where you were in Rutland, Vermont.
Yeah, totally. And a lot different than the Bay Area, California, too.
Right. Yeah.
Which is where I grew up.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, New York City changed me.
Yeah.
Um, before I moved to New York City, I didn't get New York City. I didn't get
Right.
it.
Right.
A lot of people love the idea of New York City and they get it and they want to move there. Um, I was the opposite. I was kind of like, New York City. God,
Yeah.
it's like so big and sprawling
Yeah.
and it's like hard but um but living in New York City completely changed my understanding of what New York City is,
Hmm.
and it really improved me. Um, and I developed love for New York City.
No.
So New York City is it's diverse in a way that's hard for people to really grasp.
Hmm.
Um, like people think in the Bay Area, people think of San Francisco as diverse or
Yeah.
Oakland, but it's just on a really different scale. So, like,
Hmm.
one statistic that I'm always really struck by is that in New York City, 50% of the workforce, people that actually work in New York City, were born outside of the United States.
Oh, wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
Huh.
And New York City is not predominantly like from anywhere. New York
Right.
City is truly a melting pot of the world.
Yeah.
So every group of people from every place
Hmm.
and every subculture that exists in like almost any society like is in New York City.
Yeah.
And people find each other. Um, People congregate. And so yeah, they're sort of like there are cultural cliques and niches. You walk down the street and you can hear so many different languages being spoken.
Hmm.
Um, and New York City, like the people that are custodians of the city of New York City, um, also have this like in love for the city and creating a place that really works
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
everyone.
Yeah.
So there's sort of like I feel like an integrity to the I don't know to the whole society or system
Hmm.
um there, and yeah, I love it.
Yeah, beautifully said. You were able to articulate. Sometimes it's hard, like you said, it's hard to describe New York City, right? It's like diverse is one of the words I use as well. But like you said, it's not only like diversity of like, race and gender, and I think it's like diversity of everything, diversity of thought, diversity of
Mhm.
just experiences and
Mhm.
where people come from and everyone brings their own flavor, their own flair to New York City, right? I
Mhm.
miss it, which I'm actually really excited for fortune, I'll be going back to New York City because working remotely, quite honestly, like I was missing some of that like
Yeah.
excitement, right? Like,
Yeah, sure.
yeah. So cool, man. Well, Lionel, I just want to acknowledge you for like just your brilliant mind, your friendship, your heart, your warmth, your care, curiosity. You're an incredible dude, and I'm really grateful for our friendship.
Oh, thank you, Davidson. Yeah, I like I really appreciate you too. And like I keep on seeing how you like really bring people together. You're very connecting. Like, and I feel like you are sort of the way that like social networks are built, you
Uh-huh.
know? You sort of like have the ability to create a social network and like cause it to branch out and grow.
Oh,
So you've
thank you.
got sort of a remarkable ability, and it's real. It's I think it's a just I think it's really helpful. I think it's something that makes your whole community stronger, more interesting, better.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's cool to be part of yeah, part of this like this network of connection through you.
Oh.
And yeah, and I appreciate you having the curiosity and the interest to ask me about what I'm doing. Um, and share our conversation too. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think that, so many takeaways from this conversation, but I think if it's, if anyone, I would say, just do something that makes you happy is one of my takeaways from this conversation. Like, actually be intentional, journal about like the things that light you up, the things that bring you joy, the moments that you'll treasure, and sort of like what legacy you want to leave behind. Like, I think that's important. I think so many of us do what our parents want us to do, our spouses, and what society wants us to do. And I think it's great to have folks like yourself who are living it. And of course, we all have our ups and downs, right? I'm sure. But I think because of your mindset and just your so many lived experiences, like, you can honestly say like, okay, like, I've lived a pretty awesome life, and I think that's my main takeaway from our conversation.
Cool. Yeah, I like it. That's great.
All right, brother. We'll have fun in Germany, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch.
All right. Thank you, Davidson.